All right, we're live on Facebook. Hey, everybody, thanks for tuning in again. Every Wednesday, 10 a.m., we bring you another session of enterprise coaching. I'm David Adam Kurz. I am the leader of the Kurz team here in Miami, Florida, as well as a big part of eXp Realty and the Enterprise Coaching Network. Every week, we try to bring you a very special individual who can bring a lot of knowledge to the table and bring a lot of their expertise to the table to allow you or help you build your business. So today we have Ishay. How you doing, sir?
Good, thank God. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Thanks for being on the show. So you are the founder of Rental Beast. Can you please, for a moment, tell everybody what Rental Beast is?
Rental Beast is an MLS for rentals. If you ever tried to service rentals, you know that most MLSs provide a relatively small portion of the available inventory in the marketplace. And because the listings come from other agents, they provide sometimes fairly low commissions. So Rental Beast built a database of a little more than 8 million properties that are off MLS, coming direct from the owners, and basically help agents service the half of the population that rents before they're buying, and helping them converting the renters they're working with into a buy-side transaction.
Awesome. So I wanted to bring you on the show. You obviously have a ton of experience with rentals, and I wanted to bring you on the show because this is going to be a hot topic over the next couple of years, I think. And we were speaking a little bit before the show, and we were talking about the fact that coronavirus is coming in and really changing the world. And there's a lot of folks losing their jobs. Potentially, we're going to be facing losing homes. Those folks will be looking for rentals, and there's going to be an uptick in the need for rentals in the market. And then on the flip side of that, we also had a conversation on how some folks should be cashing out right now on their refinance, purchasing investment properties so that they have those rentals available for folks who need it. What do you see happening right now? Why are we even talking about rentals?
Well, we could take a step back before I go into what's happening on COVID and just say rentals is not a niche market. If you're listening to this live broadcast or on the podcast later, you understand it's important. And I've been an agent 15 years. I've been a managing broker in a couple of different states, New York and Massachusetts, and we're in the relationship business. So we meet people and we need to find them, try and navigate, help them find the right place to live or the right place to invest in. Half of the population in this country rents, and it's almost 60% of the population in some of the key urban markets. So you have 110 million people in this country that choose to rent before they buy, and ignoring or not being able to effectively service that population before COVID, during COVID, after COVID is really, really important. I don't know that a lot of agents and brokers understand how big the market is. So I'll just throw a number out there. Maybe it will surprise some people, maybe it won't, but there are $12 billion in annual leasing commissions available to agents every single year. It's very difficult to access these commissions through the MLS, as I said, but that's kind of why we built our platform. But if you build relationships directly with investors, with landlords, with property managers, it's a very, very big market.
So how many billion did you say?
12.
$12 billion. And then we have agents in the market that go, oh, no, I'm sorry, I don't do rentals.
Yeah, so here's another couple misconceptions I'd like to dispel. It used to be, and it really was, I started in the business late 2001. It used to be that you rented because you couldn't afford to buy. So the kind of the conception of rentals was, I don't want to deal with renters because they might not be able to get approved for a mortgage or they don't have a ton of income. That's changed a lot. I mean, what's really, if you think about the sales market, what's been driving the sales market for the past 30 years or so is the boomer generation. And a lot of these boomers that have owned homes for 30 years or so are, as you said, cashing out, downsizing because their kids left the nest. They're sick of maintenance, depending on where they live, right? You have to maintain a house that's nonstop. Right. And I don't have it on the screen, but Freddie Mac did a study. 10% of boomers say they're going to sell their home and rent. So when you look at the downtown areas and you see these really luxurious rental properties with tons of amenities,
that's who's going.
Yeah, they're built for that generation that has a lot of equity and great credit. And as a result, the commission payouts are really amazing. And here's another amazing stats that even surprised me. 32% of all the rental applications processed in the downtown areas are for 60 plus years old renters. So it's not a young man's game anymore, and it's very affluent.
We thought it was for a minute there. If you don't know the numbers, you assume that the renter is the millennial who doesn't want to buy, or the renter is, the person who can't afford a home, which I've been battling that for probably the last decade, because interest rates have been so good for so long that you almost tell people, listen, it's almost more expensive to put first last security and the dog deposit down. It's more affordable to buy FHA or VA with no money down, right?
It's another great reason to be in the rental game. And if you've been in it, I'm sure you've experienced it. So Zillow ran a study the last couple of years, and I think there was 13,000 participants in it. So super statistically valid. And they found that 52% of everybody in the country that bought a home last year actually considered renting. And 58% of everyone that actually rented a place last year actually considered buying. So what does that mean to me if I'm an agent or a broker, especially if you're a first-time buyer, or even if you're not a first-time buyer? Buying is not something people do very frequently, unlike rentals, right? Rentals, you work with a renter, the second they sign a lease, when their lease runs out and when they have to make another decision to renew, to move somewhere else, to buy. So the velocity of the transaction is a lot faster.
Right.
But when you sell a place, 7 years until you meet them again. So it's a lot tougher. It's a much more prolonged relationship building exercise. So if you work with first-time buyers, sometimes they come to you as a lead for a rental. They don't know that they can get pre-approved. As you said, it might be easier for them, especially with today's rate, to explore condos, but you need to get engaged. You need to attract renters, step number one. And step number two is have the tools to have the real conversation, pre-qualifying, figuring out are they a valid prospective buyer or not. And if you don't open that funnel really, really wide to the other 50% of the population, you're really limiting yourself. So it's a really good point.
All right, so let me ask you this before we get into the tools, because I do want to talk about some of the tools that agents could be using out there to better their rental game. And look, I'm a big believer that if you do well in the rental market, you can do very well in the sale market, and all your renters will become salespeople one day. And if not, like you were just talking about, a lot of the renters that considered renting purchased instead because it made more sense, and vice versa. But when you look at that, that is simply the job of the real estate professional, to be able to have that conversation, have the right understanding, and have that conversation and say, look, this one's better for you because XYZ, right? And so, and have that true understanding of what's going on. But before we get into that, I'd like to pick your brain a little bit. So you're up north, right?
Yeah, I'm in Boston.
Right. So how's Boston right now?
Well, we're stay at home until the 18th of May. At least school are canceled for the rest of the year. They already announced that. From a real estate perspective, I don't think it's anything unusual relative to the rest of the country. I think what we're seeing is that, generally speaking, if you don't have to move, you're trying not to, just because it's tough, right? It's tough to think about slapping yourself with social distancing and everything else going on. If you do have to move, a lot of these people, and I'm a landlord myself, a lot of these people choose to rent, and everything is going virtual. I mean, that's one of the key things. How can you do whatever you need to do in a virtual way while maintaining social distancing? So
right. So and you're familiar with the New York market as well, right?
Yeah.
How's the New York market?
Terrible. I mean, New York is basically the epicenter of this virus, and the one unique thing about New York, I don't know if a lot of people know this, New York never had an MLS. So from the get-go, that market is a lot more complex and a little bit less organized. So to on top of it now put this situation and the fact that it's so congested, there's no space in New York, right? If you live in Manhattan and most areas of Brooklyn, Queens, it's so hard to maintain social distancing. It's not like you're going out to the suburbs to take, a Facebook Live open house type of thing. It's just going up to the condo you're trying to sell. You're going to meet 100 people, right? So it's just it's a tough market right now.
we actually, my wife and I, we're Harley Davidson lovers, and we're doing a fundraiser. We're gonna raise money for the fight against child abuse, and the fundraiser is to do an 11,000-mile ride around the country.
Wow.
So we're gonna jump on our bikes next week. Actually, next week we're 6 days away from the beginning of the trip, and we decided yesterday. We sat down. We had decided we're going to skip New York, because the idea was to go through New York into the Boston area and then up into Maine. But just looking at it, I said, man, running around the country on a motorcycle is already a risk. Why go straight through the heart of the beast?
Well, I will say this, having lived in New York, having worked in New York, I know it's tough right now, but I promise you, they're going to come back better and stronger than they were before.
Stronger than ever. Better and stronger than ever.
100%. It's going to be the beast of the market that it was before, and even better. I have no doubt about it.
So let's discuss this real quick. What's happening with rentals as a result of the coronavirus across the country? What are you seeing? You've got, what is it? Eight? How many million?
A little more than 8 million properties
in the rental system. So, what are you seeing happening? What's the trend across the country? What does coronavirus? Better question. What does coronavirus mean for rentals right now?
Great question. Right. So first off, the one nice thing we've noticed is that rentals, everybody wants to go virtual. If you look at rentals before COVID and in COVID, a lot of what you have to do in order to close a rental transaction has already been virtual. So if you look at the big management companies, the big buildings, even before they had virtual tours set up. Running a rental application, right? So now you found the property, and we're onboarding hundreds of virtual tours every single week.
That's right.
Making it easier to search for them, make it easier to show properties. That's number one. So it's already been virtual. Everything in the transaction, from lead generation to showing the property virtually, to processing the applications virtually, signing a lease virtually, getting paid, even post the transaction, collecting rent payments digitally. It's already in place. So there doesn't need to be what's happening now on the sales side. There's a lot of what I call digital leapfrogging.
Right.
And a lot of states, for example, in order to close a sale, you need to have a notary. Now they have to change regulations and do e-notaries and allow all kinds of stuff to facilitate virtual transactions. That's already in place for rentals. So that's number one, easier to close transactions. Number two, the landlord population is freaking out. Okay, so I'm a landlord. What did I do in March? I went to all of my tenants and I said, look, if you renew your lease by the end of April, I'm not going to raise your rent, in hopes that I don't have to deal with a vacancy.
Right.
Surprisingly, some of them took me up on it and signed the lease, but others came back and was like, no, I'm moving out. And I went back and was like, why are you moving out right now? You crazy? And then, they want to save money. A lot of, there's a trend now. Some people want to get out of the city and go to the suburbs because they realize, okay, I'm going to work from home and I want an office and home office and stuff like that. So everybody has reasons why they want to.
It's work from home office, and save some money. It's a combination to leave the city and head up to the suburbs.
That's right. So now I have vacancies that they have to fill. So all these landlords are sitting there and they realize they live in a world where if they're not set up virtually, and the smaller the management company, and you have to understand half the rental inventory in this country is coming from small mom and pops like me, not from big management companies, people without an infrastructure, people that it might not even be their job. My job is not my rental inventory. I happen to have investment properties, right, for additional income, but it's not what I do day in and day out. Right. So those people present an amazing opportunity for agents to go and say, hey, can I virtualize this transaction for you? But what these landlords are doing is we're seeing concessions offered to both tenants and commissions offering to renters skyrocket. I brought some examples just from the Miami market. Some crazy stuff. There's a building called Altus Pembroke Garden.
Okay.
Tenants get up to 3 months rent on some units. We've never seen something like that.
Right.
Right. The commission's paid up to
15-month commitment, but yeah.
Right? But you have moratoriums on evictions. You have rent defaults. You have some media outlets almost encouraging renters not to pay their rent. It's kind of crazy.
It's insane.
Yeah. So you're sitting there as a landlord, it's like, I can't evict anybody. I don't know how much rent I'm going to collect. In April, it was 90% rent collection. In May, it was a little less, but not terrible. The longer this thing goes on, it's not going to get any better.
No, it's not.
You have 30 million unemployed. So they're sitting there like, look, I'll offer free months rent to the tenants, and I'll offer higher commissions to the brokers. So the net of all of it is agents can make more money. It's easier and faster to close these transactions totally digitally. And we haven't talked or touched about that yet, but I think they have an opening not only to build relationships with renters that convert into home buyers, but they have a really good opportunity to build relationships with investors that are super active right now. Mm-hmm. And this is when they're making their money. They're looking for those opportunities.
Right.
Eon Flagler Village, 14-month leases gets 2 free months rent, right? So they're looking for the commitment. Celeste Blue Lagoon, 2 free months on a 16-month lease, and they're waiving the application and the admin fee. Amare Las Olas, up to 2 months free on selected units. I mean, it's we've never seen something like that.
Right.
You can move in and not pay months for 2, 3 months. It's nuts.
Yeah, and man, I'll tell you, it's going to be continuous of a trend. I think even personal landlords will begin to make moves like that, to be honest. Like we talked about it now. You went to your tenants, you said, hey, listen, you signed a lease for another year. I won't raise your rent. No problem. And some people took you up on it. But the question now is, had you gone over there and said, hey, if you sign a lease for another year, or for the next 15 months, I'll give you the next 2 months free, maybe 100% of them would have stayed. So people are going to start thinking about that. Rather than have somebody stay in my house and not pay me, let me make it an option for them and work amicably together. That's just what people are going to face now. Now, my fear is this. That's right now. Maybe that's not even right now. Maybe that's like 2 months from now. But what happens in the rental market if this virus situation just flows all the way through the end of the year and we don't fully open back up till first quarter of 2021?
Yeah, so I mean, look, you got to use history as something that can inform your decision. And it's true, maybe this pandemic is unique and we haven't had this reason for a financial and a real estate crisis before.
Right.
But we've had 08 and 09, and that was real estate led. We had the early 90s. I mean, every 10 years or so, it seems, you have some sort of a financial crisis event. And when you look at the last 100 years of rentals, people have basic needs. The first thing is food, right? Health, food. And the third thing is shelter. That's not going to change. And last time I checked, they didn't start making more land in any factory. So the land we have is the land we have, right? So if people need a place to live, in a way, the longer the crisis goes on, the more affordable housing solution people will need, because they're worried about their income, they want additional flexibility. So if you look at rentals 100 years back, vacancy rates fluctuate from 2 to 7% in most key markets. That's it. So it doesn't go nuts. And there is a survey. There is a big property management company, property management software company called Yardi. Maybe some people are familiar with it. And right when this thing was hitting, they did a survey between March 18th to March 20th, and they just asked renters, do you still plan on moving despite the ongoing pandemic? 56% say yes, as soon as I find a new place to live, right? So
56%.
56%, and that was right when all these stay-at-home orders were coming down. So we see it, the demand in some markets is as strong or stronger, meaning the consumer searches are as strong or stronger than they've been last year. In some markets, it's down. But I don't think people are going to stop moving. People need to move. People want to save money. People get a different roommate. People want to move into the suburbs. So, and I think in a way, agents are more important now than they were before COVID. Because think about it. If you were moving to a new neighborhood, or if you were moving from out of town, what were you able to do before? Is if you wanted to do it yourself, you can search online, visit the neighborhoods, right? Ask around, blah, 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 and then maybe find a place. You can't do that now.
Right.
You're going to jump on a plane. You're going to drive 6 hours without knowing what you're seeing and who you're seeing and why you're seeing it. If you can have a resource that's a local expert that knows the lay of the land, has comprehensive access to inventory, that can share with you good quality virtual tours and can take you through the transactions, of course you're going to take advantage of it.
Right.
Same if you're a landlord. I have properties in Boston. I live a half hour away. I'm telling you right now, I have no interest in driving a half an hour every time somebody wants to see the place, because I don't want to have to inconvenience my tenants, right? Because they live there, they're under a stay-at-home order. I don't want to have to clean up. It's like I want to do things the most efficient way possible. So I'm in the business. So what I did when I realized I'm going to have vacancies is I went and I found what I believe is, one of the best providers of virtual tours, and I'm putting together a super compelling package to market that unit. But guess what? Most people aren't me. Most of these small landlords desperately need an agent to give them a call and say, hey, I see you have a vacancy for you.
Right.
And guess what? A lot of these landlords like me are investors. And in these downturns, that's when they're getting more active.
It's funny how just months ago, there were, conferences about, is the agent going to be irrelevant? You know what I mean? Like, think about that for a second. 6 months ago, the hot topic was the Zillows and the Realtor.coms of the world taking over and making it too easy, and clients don't need realtors anymore. What's going to happen to the realtor? And real estate professionals argued, we're still going to be needed because this is still a people business, right? And as much as technology can give you, it's still a tool. Somebody has to do the job, And so, that argument kept coming up, and now you just voiced out loudly, real estate professionals are needed now more than ever, right? And so it's funny how the world makes its moves.
It's, I try to compare it. I try and give people an example of other industries that have kind of eliminated the middleman, so to speak, and why it's not going to happen in real estate. So one really easy industry to think about is the travel industry. In the olden days, if you wanted to book an airline ticket or take a vacation, what did you have? You had a broker for vacation. It used to be called the travel agent.
Right.
And they had some secret backdoor access to the inventory of the rooms and the inventory of the flights, and they booked it and packaged it for you. And then Expedia comes along, and all of a sudden you can just see what seats are available and see what time to book them, and you don't need the middleman. Where are the travel agents, right?
Right.
Why is that not going to happen in real estate? In my opinion, the reason it's not going to happen in real estate is because an airline seat is a commodity. There's not a lot of variation. What are you getting? You're getting a seat. You're getting the seat in the aisle. You're getting it in the window. That's your decision. Right? The same thing with an hotel room. Do you want a king bed or a queen bed? That's the decision.
What view, ocean or a street?
Right.
It's easy.
When you find a place to live, the amount of variables is insane. Any agent that's worked the field knows sometimes the people you work with don't even care about the property. You'll go into the property will be okay. Be like, you know what? There's a Whole Foods down the street. That's what I care about. The sun is coming from the north instead of from the east, right? I have a dog park. There's so many variables. I want to have a gas stove as opposed to, induction or an electrical stove. I want to have laundry in the unit. There is a million variables, and these variables change on a per client basis. So you can't have robots do that. It's so personal that I don't see the agents going anywhere anytime soon.
So we got a great question here from Alexa. I have a rental property and I'm considering selling. Do you recommend selling?
Ooh, talking about variables.
Very loaded question.
Look, me personally, I'm a buy and hold forever type of guy. And I can tell you that when I started to first invest in real estate, I made the mistake. It was kind of before 2008, and everybody was flipping. Kind of like iBuyers a little bit, Everybody was flipping. You buy it, you renovate it, 2 weeks later, you make a pile of money. I got burnt hard trying to do that, right? Because if you don't time it properly and if you don't buy it just right, it's just not a super scalable business, in my opinion. So I'm a buy and hold forever kind of guy. So every time I look at a piece of real estate, the first question that I have to answer for myself, whether it's worth purchasing, not just investment, even primary residence, can I hold on to this for 10 years financially? And do I want to hold on to this for 10 years financially? even if there is an opportunity to sell it in 2 weeks, those two questions have to be a solid yes. Because if it's a solid yes, I can overcome any downturn. And this is a property that I'm gonna like keeping. So you're asking me, I have a rental property considered selling. Do you recommend? How much equity do you have in it? What is the NOI? What is the net operating income of that property? What are you getting in return? What is your return on this investment every month, right? So I listened to, and I'm going all over the place, but just to give you a sense of how to maybe think about it, I was listening to Warren Buffett speak 2 weeks ago. He had his annual conference for Berkshire Hathaway, and a good friend of his that's not nearly as wealthy as his said, "Hey, can I invest some money with you?" And he kind of looked at her financial situation, and he realized that she has credit card debt. Not a lot, but she had whatever, $10,000 or $15,000 in credit card debt, and that credit card debt was at 17 or 20% interest.
Right.
So he said, "Why are you giving me money? You know how hard it's going to be for me to give you a 17 to 20% return year over year? That's a very good return on investment. The first thing you need to do is you need to clear your 20% debt before you invest anything else." So when you look at this rental property, are you getting a return of less than zero? Yes, you should sell it if you can for a profit, right? If you're getting a return of 5% or 10% or 15% or maybe more, some of my properties, I have a 30% cash on cash year over year. Why would I ever sell them? Yes, I look at this period as an opportunity to maybe refi, right? Maybe do some work on the property that will help me, next year or the year after that, raise rents or bring a different type of tenant in. It depends. It depends on the property, but you need to make the calculation of, will this money that you'll have from the proceeds of the sale work better for you, generate more income or revenue for you if you put that somewhere else? It won't if you put it in a checking account.
Now we got a little more context. It's almost paid off. How do you calculate NOI? So, like, just in I'll let you explain the calculation of NOI, but just with that first piece of this comment, it's almost paid off. It's in my brain, like you just said, she has to be receiving a profit on this month over month if it's almost paid off, right? If there's a tenant in place, it's a rental property. If there's a tenant in place, this is income that you could look at forever. And if you sell it, the question is, what are you going to do with the money? Are you going to go buy 2 more investment properties, and will they give you the same rate of return? Or are you going to sell it and just stack cheese in the bank? I'm more like you, where I say, if I'm buying an investment property, I would like to hold on to it forever. And if I could, a story about a client of mine who has a huge rental portfolio in the Northeast through Maryland, Virginia, and states like that. And he was a big flipper. You were talking about the flipping, it brought him to mind. And he was doing well. I mean, he was flipping properties, was making $20,000, $30,000 a property. He's flipping 2-3 properties a month. And he said to me, he goes, "I felt rich for the first time in my life," right? And he said, then I sat down with a very wealthy friend of mine who I used to borrow money from to flip, right? He said, this was my hard money lender. He would take his personal money and lend it to me and charge me points and the whole nine so that I could go flip properties. And we went out to lunch one day and he looked at him and he said, "You might be rich right now and you might be feeling good, but you'll never be wealthy because you'll always be as good as your last flip."
That's exactly right.
And he said to him, wait. He said, "Listen, why don't you try this? The next great flip that you find, keep it. It's going to hurt." And he said, "Man, did it hurt." Yeah, he bought that house, he renovated it, and he knew he could sell it and make 30 grand like tomorrow. And he kept it. And he saw that monthly residual income, if you will, start coming in. And it changed his life forever. Now he's got close to 200 properties, So the question is, what are you going to do with it? But can you go into calculating NOI with it?
NOI stands for net operating income. And usually what that consists of is the taxes, the property taxes on the property, plus any utilities and maintenance that you have. So utilities are easy to calculate. You know what you're paying. Maintenance, you can just average out. I don't know how long you've owned the property, but Usually you have some sort of a cruising altitude of what you pay for maintaining a certain property. If it's 100 years old, it's going to look like X. If it's, built 5 years ago, it's going to look closer to zero, I hope. But that's the net operating income, right? And then you take the income, the actual revenue that the property generates, and you can take the income minus the NOI, and that's your rate of return. Right. You can add debt service if you have. It sounds like you have a little bit of debt service on this property that goes into your NOI bucket. It's just basically a P&L. You have to do a small P&L.
Right.
To buy two more.
So to crazy dumb it down right now, look at the numbers. And Alexa, look, I'll warn you, do your numbers and know your numbers, right? So, it's about, understanding what that property is costing you for the last 12 months. Let's just do it that way. For the last 12 months, what does that property cost you and what does it bring you, and figure out what that percentage of income is. And then if you're going to sell it, to go buy two properties, because you said that's your plan. Yes, that's my plan, to buy two more if possible. If you're going to sell it to buy two properties, then what does the income, the NOI, look like on those two properties, right? Now you have to do an estimate on maintenance, right? You have to estimate that. Then you have to figure out what your mortgage is going to be, and what your expenses overall are going to be on the property, and then what you could potentially rent it for if it's not already rented and has proof of rental, and understand what that is. If you're going to make the same or less, may not be worth it, right? Some folks might have a different opinion. They might say renting or having two properties is extremely better than having one, even if you make the same NOI on one that you do on two. Because if one is not rented for some reason or vacant, you still have another one paying half of that cost. So just things to think about. But hopefully that helped you out tremendously. Matt, I know Matt Joseph, great guy, owns a brokerage in Miami Beach, says condos are the worst investment. Stay away. I do not disagree with you, my friend.
Oh, there's just a lot of talk about variables. You don't want to have any investment you make, whether it's in stock or in real estate, you want to have a clear sense of what's going to happen. And the thing about condos, sometimes, you buy into a property and then you have an assessment because the roof needs to be replaced or the elevator doesn't work. And all of a sudden you worked on thin margins and you thought you were going to make 5% every month, and that you can kiss goodbye for 5 years now until you pay off the assessment or whatever.
Right.
So, and then some of these condominiums have special rules about whether you can even rent it out and how many condos can rent it out. It adds a layer of complexity, not impossible to do, but I tend to agree with him that it wouldn't be the first choice. But sometimes in certain markets, like, Miami market has a lot of condominiums. So, and a lot of people have a lot of money investing in them. So it's not impossible, just a little bit more complicated. You need to be aware of what you're getting yourself into. Absolutely.
All right. So let's talk about this. What's the average agent? I don't know. You could pick a state, maybe pick Florida, or maybe pick the country. Like, what does the average agent do in rental transaction count?
So most agents, I would say, do accidental rentals. There is a small percentage of agents that do this kind of all the time. Alexa saying she's not selling. Just to go back to Alexa, because I'm thinking about it now and I really want to help. Another thing you can do is, instead of thinking of selling to buy, it doesn't have to be so binary. Maybe you can just pull some cash out and go slower. Life's a marathon, not a sprint. First, identify something that you're really hot to trot on. And if you have some other investment properties, like, man, I gotta have it. It makes sense. The numbers work out. Okay, then figure out, how do I finance that? Maybe the best idea is not to sell what you already have, like bird in the hand, two in the bush type of thing. But sounds like it's almost paid off. Take, a line of equity, put a down payment, and take it slow. Rates are great. So most agents are going to do like 2 to 4 transactions a year, and it's going to be accidental. Then you have the agents. I would say that's 70% of the agents. I mean, now that's changing, we hope, so that they can generate some more revenue. But that's about 80% of the agents. The rest, you have 10% that will do kind of 5 to 10. So they have a more active rental portfolio, but again, not a core focus. And then about 10% that they understand that it has to be a solid part of their growth strategy. They understand that these types of downturns happen, and they don't want to be caught, the emperor without a clothes on, where you just rely on, you have to diversify, right? You can't just sell single family homes in my 4 blocks.
Right.
That's not diversification.
No, it's not.
You could be the best at your neighborhood in selling condos or SFRs, but you have to do rentals. You have to work with investors, maybe introduce a property management division. You got to service the ecosystem of housing if you want to have a sustainable business that doesn't stop growing and that's not super sensitive to any disaster.
Right.
A hurricane, a pandemic. You want to have a bulletproof business that you know can feed you. I just wrote an article, I released it last month, because if you look at the first quarter of this year, any agent with a pulse could sell houses. The market was so good. Everybody was breaking records. What?
All of last year too.
All of last year too. Yeah, it was a great market. Everybody's breaking records. Rates are low. Inventory is tight. Demand is insane. Of course. But the game has changed. So I wrote an article, and I called the article that we moved from playing Who Wants to Be a Millionaire to Survivor Corona Island, right? So it's kind of the game has changed a little bit. So you got to have that mindset even in the good times.
Where's this article located?
It's located on our blog, Rental Beast blog. Well, we can share it.
Look for it. I'm going to look for it while you talk.
Yeah. So what I wrote there is you want to prepare for these bad times. We don't just work, like you said about your friend that was the flipper. If you live from flip to flip, and I remember this life as an agent, if you move from one transaction to another transaction, you never really become wealthy. You never get to a point where you can just have peace and quiet and have a reliable, steady source of income. And I always believed, like, I build a relationship, I work hard to build a relationship. I want that relationship to know that I am there for them no matter what their housing circumstances are. If they're investors, I'm their guy. I can help them find the right investment property. So yes, I'm going to know terms like NOI, and I'm going to know terms like cap rates, and I'm going to know, what the rental yield of a property is going to be. I'm going to be able to speak that language so that I can have a relationship with that investor. If I'm working with a renter, I'm going to have all the tools to actually help that renter have comprehensive inventory to all the rental inventory, not just what's on the MLS and what's on the internet.
Right.
If I'm working with a buyer, of course, have all the right tools for that as well. So you got to do it all if you want to have a sustainable business. And I think agents are coming to that realization, unfortunately, during these types of periods.
So let's get into best tools. Can we do that?
Well, I'm not going to sit here and taunt best tools, but I'm going to give whoever is listening some resources that they can use that are in our portfolio. Okay. Because we worked hard on them for the better part of a decade, and hopefully they find them useful. So first of all, we found that there is a huge educational gap, and I see some of the questions coming in. A lot of agents never get educated about renters. How do I work with renters? How do I convert renters to home buyers? How do I work with investors and so on? So we built an entire university, and we're providing free access to that. It's on-demand education, and I think there is in the banner of this actually.
Is the link there? I'm going to even share it up here while we talk about it.
Yeah, the link to all the resources. So Rental Beast University, they can access that for free. Okay. Second tool we're going to give away for free is if you're already working with renters. One of the things that always dogged me is that when it came down to actually processing an application and getting a deal done, a lot of paper got pushed around. And most agents, that's how they do it. So we've built a tool, we call it Apply Now, where once you have a prospective tenant or a prospective landlord ready to process an application, it's a one-pager, it's easy to use. You can send that prospective tenant a digital application. The landlord, or if you're the landlord, you get back the credit report, the background check, the eviction history, and the full credit application, and then you can make a decision. You can upload any documents, supporting documents you may want. So you can have the use of that for free as well. It's part of the resource. The third thing that we want to share is if you are not currently working with real estate investors, right? So we talked about renters and converting renters to home buyers. And one thing we didn't touch a lot about, but worth spending a second on, is that everybody understands that the largest group of buyers are these millennials and Gen Zs. That same group of people represents 65% of all the renters. So in other words, building relationship with renters, potentially. Yeah, here we go. Who wants to be a millionaire? That's it. I like that picture too. Building relationship with renters is tapping into, in the most cost efficient possible way, to the largest group of prospective home buyers. So we're going to give you a PDF that's give you 6 tips to finding investors in your market, and just hopefully get you started. And my suggestion would be, start off, make a goal for yourself to engage with a handful, 5 investors. Because if you remember, in 2008, 2009, the last crash, there was no concept of single family rentals, meaning institutionally. The smartest investor in Wall Street, Blackstone came, Colony came, and they bought tens of thousands of these homes that couldn't sell. And all of a sudden, we find ourselves in a world where you have massive portfolios of single family rentals. The same thing is going to happen now. These investors have cash, they're on the sideline, and they're looking for opportunities, and it's a great recurring business. So 6 tips on how to find investors. As far as our own platform of 8 million properties, if you wanted to utilize that, if you're ready to, or if you're interested in taking your business to the next level, there is a charge for that. We are now providing kind of a half off to the people that will be listening to this broadcast. So we'll give them a promo code. It's called Grow 2020. And it's part of the link and resources at the bottom of the page. And if you're on this broadcast and you're already a Rental Beast partner, agent, or broker, we've created a complete A to Z guide for virtual showings, virtual transactions, literally A to Z, how to close transactions virtually and get paid. So once you log into your broker portal, you'll see a little camera icon. Click on that. I would strongly encourage you to go through that guide, because it will organize life for you on how to close these transactions virtually and start generating some revenue ASAP. So those are the resources we want to share today.
That's amazing, and I appreciate that. We've put the links out on social media for everybody. Michael, who works with Ishay, and myself, we've been putting all the links and all the comments out. We shared the page with you guys for a little bit so that you can see where the website is and where to find things. Just go right to the Rental Beast website. Go to For Agents section, and you'll see the university. You'll see other information on there. Read some blogs, get a true understanding of what's going on, and educate yourself. We brought this to the table because it's important right now, and it's going to continue to be important over the coming months as homes begin to shift. And unfortunately, people are going to be losing their houses and other needs. There are other needs. There's a reason why real estate was deemed as a essential business.
Essential service, yeah.
And it's not because we're cool, it's because we're necessary. And so once you have a true understanding of that, we have this joke that we say, and there are 2 types of clients coming out of this in a little bit. It's going to be the client that's absolutely stuck at home with somebody they absolutely hate, and we're going to have to find them some rentals or new purchases and do some sales there. Or there's the client who is going to need a larger house in 9 months. So clients coming out of this. So it's about finding and shifting. We talk about shifting all the time. Every time there's a market shift, agents, real estate professionals, we need to understand the shift as well. Having rentals in your repertoire of business, in your resume, is a great thing to have. I know that there's a lot of agents out there that look and they go, "Oh no, I don't do rentals." Well, okay, you're fancy. We'll let you go about your own business. I do sales and rentals. Why? Because I understand renters eventually become buyers, and guess what? Buyers eventually become renters. Like we talked about in the very beginning of this session, was that there are a lot of people 60 plus that are empty nesters that are selling their large homes and moving into luxury rentals. And these luxury rentals are $7,000, $8,000, $9,000 a month. That's a pretty cool, commission check there as a rental, So I want to thank you for being on the show with us today, for sharing all the free resources that you gave out today, sharing a 50% discount on a paid resource that you gave out today. There a lot of great information went out. It was great seeing you. Glad to see that you and your family are safe and healthy. and stay Boston strong, I guess.
Thank you, David. Enjoy your Harley ride around the country. I have a crazy Harley story, but not for this podcast, some other time. And stay safe. Thank you. It's my pleasure.
Thank you. And everybody else, take care. We'll be here again tomorrow. We're going to bring Stanley Rosen on the table tomorrow. And then next week, 10 a.m. Wednesday, I'll be doing it from the road. See y'all soon.